What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Joe Niss, and with me, as always, is Mr. David Fuchs, coming to us from the beach
From
down in
from
Florida.
South Beach. Yep, I was gonna
Woo!
say I'm in South Beach.
What
But
are what are temps in South Beach right now? 70s, 80s?
well, no, actually, so just for everybody, we're recording in the second week in January here. So this is gonna be a little outdated, but actually right now, South Florida's going through a little bit of a cold spell. So it's actually like last night, it got into like the mid 50s down here, which
Ooh,
for people up north, they're like, oh, that's warm for December. That's like
spring.
really warm, especially for what's going on in New York and New Jersey right now, where it's like in the teens. But for South Florida at this time of year, it's pretty cold for them. Like obviously, I can go outside, in sweatshirt. I can even probably deal with a t-shirt just because I'm used to it. But for down here, they're wearing like jackets and heavy sweatshirts, and yeah,
Yeah, for Floridians,
surprise.
that's tough. That's
Yeah,
yeah. I worked with a couple people down in South Florida, and anytime it gets into the 50s, they're freaking out. They're like,
yeah.
I have to put my jacket on. I'm like,
Exactly, exactly.
let's calm it down. Let's calm it down
Yeah.
because people coming from New York are like, this is short sleeve weather. Get the convertible
Yeah.
top
Oh
down.
yeah. No joke. Exactly.
So, David, we're entering into the last month of prep at this point. We're roughly 5 weeks out from the beginning of the CFP exam cycle. What are some do's and don'ts that you think students should be focusing on at this point? And let's start with a couple of do's. What do you think, like one thing that everybody should continue to do or they should absolutely be doing in this last month that maybe gets overlooked?
Well, I think that we kind of hit on it in the last episode when we were talking about this last month and some of the nerves that come along with it and how you can overcome some of those nerves. But when it comes to specific do's and don'ts, I think one of the things that is extremely valuable and underrated, and we talked about this again last time, we talk about this all the time, is just staying fresh, and that's your body, that's your mind, because that's ultimately going to be the engine that's going to fuel everything that you do this last month leading up to the exam. If you can know every single topic like the back of your hand, but if you aren't mentally sharp there, or if you're not, getting a proper rest, or if you're not having a proper diet where you're feeling good and in the zone, all that kind of goes out the window and it offsets all of that. So that would be my number one, when obviously you got to study, you got to stick to your plan, you got to, continue to take your mock exams and do all that. But the one thing that I think no matter what your material plan is, make sure you're resting, make sure that you are, staying healthy and fueled up because
I
you're going to need it.
couldn't agree more. It's such an easily overlooked thing. And you feel guilty for doing it. Like if I
Yeah,
take a
right,
break from studying, I'm like, oh, I got to get back to studying. And
right. And you should because that's all part of the process and that's all part of, you know, goes into, and this is with anything, but especially this exam where it's basically a sprint marathon to the end. Um, that's part of the productiveness is
mm,
you study for an hour, you take a break for a half hour and you go take a walk. You study for 2 hours, you take a break for an hour. It should be incorporated and baked into your plan.
yeah, I remember when I was studying for CFA, a buddy of mine had taken it. Uh, he actually took level one a couple of times, probably about 4 or 5 times. And I was, kind of just racking his brain and asking him a lot of questions on it before I took it. And I said, like, all right, study plan wise, like, what would you change? He was
Hmm.
like, I was so neurotic when I was studying for level one. I felt like I had to grab every piece of information, try to know everything that I got slapped in the face because I was like, this is not one of those exams that you can be a jack of all trades and a master of none. You have to have some mastery to some extent of all the topics. And I was like, so, like, what did you do? Well, he was like, I reduced the study plan and focus. But he was like, the thing, honestly, that made the biggest difference, he said, was taking every Sunday off.
That's interesting. And that's actually, actually really like to hear that.
Like where he was like, I would just get myself so worked up that I felt like I couldn't take a day off. And then when I started taking the day off, my Mondays were so much better
Yeah,
because
I
like
can imagine.
like I had a day that I completely disconnected from the books and I had like what a normal Sunday. I got up, I went to the grocery store, I did some meal prep, I went to the gym, I met up with a friend for lunch, I would go to the movies, do whatever he would normally do on a Sunday. And that just being disconnected for, 24 hours from the material, it was like it helped everything sink in,
Yeah.
right? Because it just wasn't so stressed all the time that nothing was sinking in.
Hmm.
But the other thing that I liked that he said was he was every time he wasn't getting something, he would like go off plan. Like he had this plan set up, and then he was like, had I just stuck to my plan, I probably would have done okay. Right. And how many times have you heard this? And probably less for you, but more for me, where a series, and this happens a lot on series 7, just because it's the nature of this exam, where students will go, the passing score in the Series 7 is a 72, and they'll get 68, 69, 70, and 71, and they'll walk out and I'll say, "What happened? Like, why didn't we get over the hump? You were doing so well. What happened?" They're like, "I went back and I changed 7 answers." And we're like, and one of our rules is unless you're 100% sure, don't change the answer. Were you 100% sure?
Right.
No. Why did you change the answer? I don't know. I kind of panicked and started changing answers. Well, why did you do that? I don't know. Like I went off plan,
Yeah.
and we don't know for certain, but most of the time, when they come back out and they like, those questions are fresh in their mind, they go and they look up the answer. Their initial answer was the right one.
That's the worst.
Right. And
That's
to
a
kind of
terrible feeling.
like that pit in your stomach of I had it correct, had I just been brave enough to stick with my plan, then I would have
Hmm.
been okay. And this happens a lot with CFP students is that you have this plan set up that is beautiful, it's excellent, and it works, and we know it will work if you stick to it. And then you have a bad quiz, and then you're like, either you just stop or you go down a rabbit hole where you keep doing quiz after quiz after quiz after quiz. And it sucks. It sucks to get a 50% and it makes you go, oh my God, I need to go back and I need to reread the chapters and then I need to rewatch the videos and then I need to do this and I need to do this and I need to do this instead of moving forward in your plan. It's a very easy thing to do.
Hmm.
So rest, stick to the plan. I would say the other thing, David, I think everybody kind of throws out the window at the end because I'm prioritizing practice questions is your flashcards.
Yeah. And those were, and I know you love those, and those were, I would say, instrumental for me personally, especially, I mean, the whole time,
Right.
the whole study process, but I would say specifically also in the weeks leading up
Yep.
when it was like, all right, I am not reading chapters anymore. I am, not necessarily doing questions every single day, and we're not doing like intensive prep, but those cards were crucial to keep you going and keep you fresh and to make you feel like you were doing something that day that was productive towards the exam. So, I totally agree, and I will also throw out there that there is no way that I would have had that incorporated as part of my plan if it wasn't for you.
I mean, that's an incredible thing to hear. And you're not the only student who feels that way because
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not.
anytime that I talk to a student after the exam, the one thing that they continue to say is, and I'll say, hey, what are the things that we did in class or that we did outside of class or your assignments you think that you wish you had done sooner or you wish you had took more seriously or was instrumental to you passing? And it's uniform. Wish I started my flashcards sooner. Like so many questions that I was, and here's the thing, they may not necessarily be like this gave me the answer because I did my flashcard. But there's so many things on there that I recognized that I was able to eliminate because I knew my flashcards. I knew things like, oh, on a SEP, somebody needs to make at least $600. Or you can have a SEP and set it up all the way till tax date. So you have for example, a self-employed person opening up a retirement account. They haven't done so at the end of the year. Now it's the next year. And this is a really good practice question that we see sometimes in
Hmm.
your prep, and it says something like simple, which you need to open up by end of the year, 401k, which you need to open up by one of the year, money purchase plan, which needs to be opened up by the end of the year. The only viable answer for that person was the SEP. And because I knew that it could be opened all the way up to tax date, that simple fact from the flashcard helped me answer the question.
Yep.
On the flip
Exactly.
side, it helps you eliminate certain answers as well inside of your multiple choice. And I remember, especially with the March group of 2024, it was like every conversation I had was like, thanks for making us do those flashcards. Thanks for being like so consistent with just saying it over and over again at the end of every class that do your flashcards, do your flashcards, do it
Yep.
with your partners, do it with your group, do your flashcards, do your flashcards. Because it's amazing how those fundamentals really come through for you on the exam.
Hmm.
Right. And again,
It is. No, it
it's an
really
easy thing
is.
to overlook because
Yeah. No,
it's
it
just
is.
this is basic stuff. I got it. Well, you got to know it inside out. You have to know
Yep.
it at a high level. Let's go to a couple don'ts, David.
Hmm.
What are some things that you think that people do that maybe feel good or they work really well in theory, but when you actually come to do them, they don't work out as well?
I'm gonna actually just list them out and then I'm gonna throw it to you. Number
Yeah.
one, I think a lot of people cram that last week and they're up till 2 or they're up in the morning and they're studying for, 5 or 6 hours straight. And I think that the college
Mm,
cramming session is an overwork, especially for this exam. And I'm gonna sneeze in like a second in the middle of this.
yeah.
So if that happens, just please just excuse myself. I could feel it coming. So number one is, cramming that last week, and in kind of coordination with that is, taking off from work the entire week to do that. I
Mm,
always said if you take off, the 2 days before, or the Friday before, or the Monday after the weekend, and then that's fine. I think a couple of days is fine, but the whole week is too much. You're gonna overload yourself, and you're gonna also psych yourself out. It's too much time to be sitting there thinking about it, and those are the two that I would say are probably like the main things that people don't think about that they think is productive, that actually for this specific exam ends up being a little counterproductive.
yeah, I would say that that's pretty accurate. I'll say here's the other thing is burning out the Q bank
Yeah.
is going to be my number one thing. Don't, because just trying to run through as many questions as I can. And again,
Yeah.
in theory,
It sounds
great
great.
study tool, right? Like,
Yeah. Yep. Hmm.
what's better than doing 100 questions a day? Doing 125. What's
Right.
better than doing 125?
Yeah.
150.
200.
Right, exactly. And you can play this game over and over again, but remember the quality in which you do the questions matters more than the quantity. I've known people who do 50 questions a day that pass and people who do 1 or 125 and don't. Because again, you start getting really reliant on the Q bank and really relying on the answers, and you start to build bad habits from the Q bank. So you want to find the balance between doing enough questions but not doing so many where you're now building a bad habit and a reliance on the question. I would say I would agree with that. The other thing that I would say is like leading into the exam, get everything off your plate. Just nothing until exam day. You know, minimize your responsibilities outside of your exam. And I understand for every one of us, that's going to be a little bit different. You have a family, work, colleagues, all those types of things. Try to delegate as much as you can so your sole focus can be on the exam. But that doesn't mean because you're delegating those things that all the time that you're saving, you have to be studying.
Hmm.
Right? Going back to David's point at the beginning of this episode, which is keeping your mind fresh, some of that time needs to be to rest, right? That is one of the keys here is that you should be resting. You should be relaxing. You should be going to the gym or going to the sauna or doing the things that you kind of put on your wish list that you want to do if you had more time. Here's your
Yeah,
chance to do it. Like this is
totally.
not a license for you that, oh, I'm leaving work 2 hours early, so I have to study every one of those minutes. That could just mean you have now additional time to make a good meal, to get to bed on time. Those things are just as important as the studying themselves.
Yep, I agree.
So, with that being said, we hope you enjoyed this episode, everybody. With any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to David or myself. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you guys on our next episode.